Well, I'm delighted this morning to be joined by David Withers, the Managing Director of Iseki UK and one of the best known faces in the industry. And I think the last time we spoke, David, was in Harrogate in January. And good grief, there's an awful lot of changes since then. A lot of what we talked about, targets, projections, promises, out the window. We're back to a fresh piece of paper. How's it been?
Yeah, never. Well, none of us have lived through this, have we? So it's new. It's a new experience for all of us. So, yeah, I mean, 23rd of March was a turning point. Really, March itself was, the first 8-10 weeks of the year were slow but kind of vaguely normal, and then really once the lockdown was announced, it was like flicking a switch, and the market fundamentally just stopped for a while. So yeah, it's been difficult. It's been challenging. It's been opportunist, an opportunity to try new things. So one of the big things we've been doing is, I'm fortunate enough, there's some paddocks near where I live, and we've been doing these virtual demos. And some, member of my household here films it just on an iPhone, and we put those online. And amazing.
That's just an iPhone.
Yeah, it's just an iPhone. The only thing we bought was a little lapel mic. So I can walk around and the lapel mic sends the audio signal to the iPhone. But yeah, it's just a normal iPhone, and so we take the videos and then muck about with them, kind of edit them a little bit, and then stick them online. And it's, we're getting thousands of views, which is good. And we have even had probably, I don't want to oversell it, but probably half a dozen people buy machines off the back of it, where they've saw the video, where can I get one of those?
That's fantastic.
And so, we are trying different things, obeying the rules, making sure we're keeping our workforce safe, encouraging our dealers to keep their workforces safe, but in the same way, trying to keep some kind of a contact with people and just try something new.
I've been musing about this a little bit, and you're probably a good person to float the idea. Is it better in these circumstances to be a big traditional company with a big loyal customer base and ingrained overheads, or a newer, smaller company who are in a position of building rather than trying to maintain? And you perhaps see it as a giant hiccup rather than an ultimate fight for survival.
Yeah, I mean, there's pluses and minuses to both, I think. Those big, traditional, monolithic companies have got huge balance sheets. They can afford to live through a long period of disruption and losses. The smaller, potentially more nimble companies are typically less strong on the balance sheet. They've often been trading for less period of time. And haven't had all those big reserves built up over many, many years of trading. So there's pluses and minuses to both. However, if you look at something like the demo thing we were doing, we'd never have been able to do that at one of the big companies because legal would have had to be involved, HR would have to be involved. It's not professional and good enough for them. But for us as a smaller company, we can do stuff quickly, take a look at it ourselves, say, yep, is it good enough? Are we happy with it? And if it is, fine. There are pluses and minuses to the different sizes of business.
Now, you've gathered yourself together quite a brains trust at Iseki with Richard and Alan. You've seen most things between you, if not necessarily a coronavirus. How has that knowledge base helped plot a path through this uncertain future?
Yeah, I think the real plus is what we have is people with a huge breadth of knowledge. If you think about the bigger companies, you have a lot of depth, but not much breadth. So you get people who know a lot about a little bit.
Yeah.
What we've got at our place, when you look at it, because all of our guys really are very experienced people, have been in the industry for a long time. It is the we have people who have not just depth of knowledge but breadth of knowledge, and we all know about the product. We all know business, we know distribution, we know sales, we know marketing, and so in some ways, whilst I have furloughed people off, the people who are still here have got that kind of breadth to be able to keep things going. And we're all just mucking in and doing stuff. I was off picking parts earlier in the week. because we needed help in that area, and that there were other things like that. So we have just got that breadth of knowledge.
And the interesting thing is, in the industry we're operating in, they are key workers. So there are people out there who are doing their jobs in a smaller scale and a more safe, self-isolating way, but they're still out there working. They're still needing Iseki parts.
Absolutely, and I mean that's what we. So within our work, within our depot, our facility, we have one person in the workshop who's picking and packing parts, and one person in the office, which is sometimes me, and sometimes it's one of the other guys, sort of administering it. And also, you can't have just one person in the facility. You've got to have two people in the facility for health and safety reasons. So we carried on with that. Again, I think this is one place where the government's messaging is mixed. You hear the stay home, protect the NHS, save lives like 150 times an hour out of the government. But then you also hear just periodically them say, well, if you can't work from home, you can go to work still. And there were certain prescribed industries that were told to close: retail, pubs, clubs, restaurants, that kind of stuff. But actually, dealerships were told to shut their showrooms, but you're allowed to keep your workshops open because, people need this stuff fixed. When you think about the people we support, we sell to some of the big infrastructure companies, who cut the power, cut the trees and shrubs and stuff like that keep the power lines clear. Well, surely we want them to continue to be able to operate. Some of our product goes into food production. People, farmers, dairy particularly, buy our tractors. Well, surely we want those guys to keep going. So whilst we're not a key industry in that sense, we're not one of the groups that was told to close. And so we did find ourselves, I think, in that first 3 weeks, we were like, no, we need to do absolutely as little as we possibly can, stay home. And I think over this last few weeks, we've been more, well, if people need parts from us, then we should be providing those parts and those services. Sorry, my dog's going now.
And we are in this very much a grey area, or moving into the grey area, where it's going to be even more complicated. And you've seen what it's been like in places like Germany, where they were very structured and did a great job. And now the virus is beginning to creep back in because it was quite a good analogy when somebody said it's not flicking a switch going back, it's turning a valve.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. And I think it is going to be completely incremental. Personally, I think we'll be under some degree of restrictions right the way through this year.
I'm sure.
Now, so that's been our take on life, is kind of once you get your head around that it wasn't going to be a 3-week shutdown and then everything back to normal, like this V shape that they talked about. Once you kind of get your head around that it isn't going to be that, then I think you've got to say to yourself, okay, this is now the new normal. How do we serve our customers and give them the support and the service that they require in this new normal? So, for example, I've written our guidelines for how we do demonstrations and deliveries going forward. So the machine is prepared, it's put on a trailer. At that point, it's sprayed with disinfectant. We have an agreement with the customer, where we're going to, that they provide their own PPE, maximum of 2 people present, obviously social distancing maintained. We send them videos, the links for them to look at beforehand so they can see how the machines work. We then take the machine there, the guy takes it off wearing gloves and all the rest of it, shows the client how to use it. They'll then use the products, then put back on the trailer, it's sprayed off with disinfectant again and then brought back. So I think there is a way of delivering machinery, doing demos with machinery that hits all of the protocols that we're required to hit, but does allow for machines to be delivered and installed and for customers to take deliveries of products.
It's finding a way around, isn't it? As you say, the new normal. Having a Japanese parent company, has that been helpful, being that Japan are further down the route than us? Have they been offered to advice, and how has it been helpful basically to you guys?
They've actually been really good. That their absolute priority has been on safety of employees. They actually provided us with a lot of PPE, in fact. So they sent us gloves, masks, all that kind of stuff from Japan without being asked. It just big parcels just arrived, and they've done that with all their distribution around the world to try and help. So they've been very good from that point of view. We were obviously working with them on financial implications of this because we're definitely selling a lot less than the plan was, and therefore we've got more inventory than we planned to have, and so on. So they've been working with us on how we all manage that side of life. Actually, Iseki themselves, the main manufacturing plant is in Matsuyama, which is in the south of Japan, where they've had very, very little coronavirus impact down there. Actually, it's one of those non-hotspots areas. They're a cold spot. I don't know whether that's an expression, but kind of a cold spot area. So the plant is still running, and obviously most of what they manufacture for Japan goes into agriculture, and so they want that plant to keep running. The Tokyo head offices are pretty much very few people there. Most people are working from home, and some of the guys are furloughed off, and so on. So kind of a mixed bag between administration very much running at a very low level, but the actual plant itself continuing to function relatively normally, but with social distancing and all the rest of it in place.
Looking at the industry as a whole, what are your thoughts and fears going forward, medium, long term?
I think this will be a sea change for the industry. I think it will be years before the industry gets back to the kind of levels of activity that there were prior to this. I think people have found they can manage with less, whether that's less staff, less machines, less whatever. You know, within all of these things, you always find out what's nice to have and what's absolutely essential.
Yeah. Like we did 10 years ago or 12 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's exactly the same as that last big recession we had, 2008-9, where we did the same, didn't we? We got rid of a load of people. We found actually we can function without as many people. And people found that they could keep machines running for longer than they thought they could, and they found that they could manage with fewer machines, so on and so forth. So I think you are going to see a hit to the industry in terms of total activities going on. I think perhaps there'll be a push towards more machines that can do more, if you see what I mean. So, one of the things we've been really pleased with, we launched just before this, was a flail mower that goes on the front of one of our products, but you can flail mow and drop the grass in the traditional way, or you can flail mow and collect the grass. And it's a 2-minute job to change from one to the other, and you can scarify with it, verticut, that kind of thing. So I think people are going to look at, rather than, right, I've got one machine that does this, I've got another machine that does that, I've got a third machine that does this. I think people are going to be saying, no, we're only going to have one machine, one guy. You're going to have to find a way to get around that, to manage through that.
Because golf clubs are going to have, instead of 6 staff, they'll have 4 staff.
Exactly.
10 staff will have 7.
I think it's inevitable that will happen. I think some golf courses will close on the back of this. I think there were some golf courses that were struggling financially anyway. And this is probably the, straw that breaks the camel's back, as it were, that it just pushes them too far over the edge. I know, talking to quite a few of the golf courses, I think the actual membership golf courses, most members have been loyal. And I've said, even though, the golf course is closed currently, I'm still going to pay my subs. Unfortunately for golf, the timing couldn't have been worse, could it? Most golf clubs have their subs due in that March-April period. So you're asking people to part with £1,000 or whatever it happens to be, right at the time that the golf course was closed. And, so I think some people have held off, kind of said, I'll wait and see. But I think 80 to 90% of golf club members probably did re-sign to support their clubs, and those guys will be all right. I think proprietary clubs, it's going to be very difficult.
Well, David, thank you very much for giving us a little bit of your time today. It's lovely to see you, even if it is just on a computer screen. And hopefully, before too very long, we'll get to meet up again sometime, and we'll maybe get another game of golf sometime. I remember a time in Askernish, and also we played, I think, at the opening of the golf course in St Andrews as well. I remember.
We did, yeah, at Castle Course.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Well, hopefully,
Yeah, back in the day.
to,
No, lovely to talk to you, Scott, and thanks for taking the time to speak
no
with me
problem.
today.
Good luck to everybody back at the ranch.